A while back I made a video that showed by adding an Atari 65XE I had completed my Atari 8-bit home computer collection. But still a model was missing. But it was a bit of a strange model. Also, it wasn't a real different model. Let's see which computer I'm referring to, and let's talk a bit about the history behind this special model. Right after this. Welcome back. Of course you already guessed which model I was talking about from the title of this video. It's the Atari 800XE. A strange model number which cannot be properly placed between the other Atari model numbers. Let's take a look at which models Atari has released over time. When Atari released the Atari Video Computer System, or the Atari 2600 in 1978, they immediately started working on a successor. By then the first personal computers came on the market, and they expected that they would take over the gaming market from the game consoles. The successor of the 2600 should therefore be also a personal computer. Atari released two models, the Atari 400 and the 800. These models were far ahead of their time, but were quite expensive. A few years later, Atari introduced the XL computers with the 600XL and the 800XL. After Atari struggled due to the video computer crash of 1983, the consumer division was sold to Jack Tramiel. He immediately started working on a 16-bit computer. But because these would become a lot more expensive, he also wanted to stretch out the 8-bit computer line for a while by releasing new 8-bit models. That became the XE line, with the 65XE and the 130XE. These computers have a look that resembles their 16-bit ST models, but more important, they were also cheaper to produce than the XL computers. But where does the 800XE fit in this list? There are different stories about the 800XE. The most common story takes us back to Eastern Europe at the end of the 1980s. When Atari released the 65XE and the 130XE, it still had large stocks of 800XL computers. These were technically the same as the 65XE. Atari then decided to only release the 130XE and also carry the 800XE for the time being. At least that's what I saw happening here in Europe then. They probably also had a lot of those models, because at one point they were offered very cheaply, I believe for about $50. Around the same time, the Soviet influence began to collapse in Eastern Europe, eventually leading to the fall of the Berlin Wall. And this also opened up the market for Western electronics over there. Jack Tramiel, who was himself an Auschwitz survivor, saw this was a great opportunity to be able to dump those Atari 800XLs over there. And this became a great success. But at some point, the stock of 800XL ran out, and the demand for more computers remained. Atari could now offer the 65XE instead, but it could not offer them for the same dump prices. So a way was being sought to produce these more cheaply. This was found by having the computer manufactured in a factory in China. But however, the computer also contained a number of special Atari chips, like the GTIA chip, which could not be cheaper produced. But Atari had still a big stock of reactor chips. And by lowering the quality standard slightly, many of those GTIA chips now did pass the test. Due to the cheaper manufacturing and the poorer chips, the quality of those machines did decline. To distinguish them between the other models, and to make it clear in Eastern Europe that this was the successor of the 800XL, this computer was called the 800XE. However, when this computer was released in Eastern Europe, many stores in Western Europe also started selling the 800XE. This model had the same specifications as the 65XE, but was a lot cheaper. But is this story true? Many now questioning this. It's true that Atari computers were widely sold in Eastern Europe at that time. This can be deduced from the large Atari 8-bit community, which is still active today in countries like Poland. But was it only the 800XE that got the cheap treatment? Many say that the later models 65XE and 130XE also came from China and also contained the faulty GTIA chips. It looks more like Atari just wanted to dump the stock of Atari chips in Europe and extend the age of the XE line by offering it cheaper. But why release an Atari 800XE next to the Atari 65XE? From this brochure from Germany, from Atari itself, it seems as the 800XE was also intended for the German market. All in all, this makes the 800XE an interesting model. That's why I went looking for one and found one. So let's have a closer look at this computer. The set I bought also includes an XC11 tape recorder. I think I make a separate video about that. And here we have the Atari 800XE. It looks good, only there's something with those functions keys. And what do we have here? Ah, a cane, always nice. And another joystick. I already have quite a number of those now. And a power supply, but of course we don't want to use that. Let's take a closer look at the Atari 800XE. The seller said it still looked like new, but it looks like they gave him the retro bright treatment for that. And yeah, that didn't work quite well with the function keys. That's a shame. And here we see this one indeed comes from China. The keyboard type is very messy, clearly low quality. Let's do some comparisons. First the 130XE. I still have this from my own youth. Here we see that this one comes from Taiwan, so not from China. This is also noticeable on the keyboard, which clearly has a better touch. You can also hear the difference. And now the 65XE. It does not say where it was made. Oh, but the keyboard feels just as messy as the 800XEs. Yes, same keyboard, clearly different from the 130XE. We will now open the 180XE to take a look at the inside. And here too we see that the keyboard is made in China. Now carefully detach the keyboard. Let's take a closer look. It's clearly visible that this has an 130XE motherboard. For later models, Atari made only one model of PCBs to save costs for the 130XE, 65XE and the 800XE. They simply left the second memory bank empty. And here we see the special Atari chips, which would include the reacted GTIA chip. And now the 65XE. Okay, it's clear now. This keyboard also comes from China. That's why the touch was just as bad as on the 800XE. Lo and behold, exactly the same 130XE motherboard as in the 800XE. So this 65XE probably also comes from China. So what's claimed that not only the 800XE but also the other later XE models also came from China appears to be true. And finally the 130XE. Aha, it looks like this keyboard doesn't come from China. And now the inside. Look, this one is clearly different from the other two. The 130XE has two banks of 64 KB, each composed of 8 chips of 8 KB. The other ones use two 32 KB chips. There's also a last minute fix here. Here we have the GTIA chip, with a different serial number than the one in the 800XE and the 65XE. Now we will compare the quality of the video signal, starting with the 800XE. We are going to look at the screen of the game Pole Position, because that one is quite colorful. Now it looks reasonable. The text is a bit blurry and I see some reflections in the blue sky from the text boxes. But now the 65XE. See if it is the same as the 800XE. Yes, it looks exactly the same, with the same reflections in the blue sky. And finally the 130XE. See if the image is different. So, clearly different, especially that grass. A completely different shade of green. I assume the green color of the 130XE is the correct one. And no reflections in the blue sky. And that was the story of the Atari 800XE. What can we conclude? It's true that not only the 800XE came from China, and it was also released on at least the German market. We also have seen that the quality of the Chinese models were clearly lower. But was the 800XE designed for the Eastern European market? We don't know that for sure yet. I would say it did, because why else would you come up with a different model number for exactly the same computer? But maybe you know more. Let us know in the comments below this video. Or just your opinion about the whole story, I would also like to know from you. Then also click on the like and subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. For now, I say, see you at the next Gespy Buildstar video. Bye!